Well, Hubs and I finally made it back from New Orleans. We made it to Dallas and then we got stuck there. A couple of flights were canceled and we had to stay the night. It is brutally cold out, you guys. It might be likewise where you are. It is 1 degree today and we have a little bit of snow cover that's insulating some things outside, but I'm really worried about what damage this cold snap might do. And what a difference between this February day, it is February 19th, and the February day in the video that we are going to post again from a few years back, talking about 5 don'ts, 5 things that I don't want to repeat in the garden. Obviously, it's a little too risky to get outside in this cold and ice. I don't want to trip while I'm filming, and neither does Stuart, so we won't be doing our traditional Wednesday walkabout. The only gardening that is taking place inside is indoor gardening. So I am definitely appreciating the muscari and the little blooming azalea that I have, and playing a bit with my topiary as I try to get caught up on laundry and bills and all of those things that collect while one is out of town. So please forgive us for not having a new video up today. We will try to get back on track this coming weekend. I am so eager to get outside and start working in the garden, but it would just be a little bit premature, I think, right now. I don't in any way want to remove any of the snow or the leaf litter, leafy blanket that is covering up the things outside, because it is insulating them from the bitter cold. So please enjoy this video. Yesterday, I was absolutely giddy, you guys. You guys that are gardeners that love being outdoors, you'll know exactly what I mean. Yesterday was, I feel like, my first real day of gardening because it was warm. I was out here. If you want to know if I always look cute when I work out in the yard, no, yesterday I looked like swamp trash. I just was filthy and dirty, and it was absolutely wonderful because I was out here from early in the morning till later in the evening doing all sorts of mucky, dirty work, and I loved every second of it. And what's wonderful about this time of year is that you get to do things that at other times of year when it's hot you don't think is very fun. But now I'm just so glad to get out there and uncover things and see what's going on that it is just, I was exultant. I was also exultant because I looked out the window yesterday. Stuart, I tried to call you to tell you and you didn't answer your phone. But I looked out my kitchen window and I spotted my first 2 really fat robins yesterday, and they were big and fat. But more exciting, there was a tiny little wren, and Stuart, remind me when we go to the back there, some wrens have moved into my wren house. Oh, cool. It's been vacant for a year or 2, and so there's a family of wrens that have moved in. So it's quite exciting. It was quite exciting around here. Okay, so today I want to go through my list of 5 don'ts. Now, lest I sound preachy or whatever, these are 5 things I personally don't want to do this year as I go into the gardening season. And those of you, here on this channel probably don't want to do these same things because they'll probably resonate with you, because I think a lot of us have the same bad habits and we forget the same things. So I'm going to go through my 5 don'ts, and I want you guys to keep me honest later and come back and ask me if I am still practicing what I preach. So I've got my list of 5 don'ts for me personally. Here's my question of the day. I want you to put in the comments below, what is something you do not want to do this year as you go into the gardening season that you may have done in the past, a bad habit or whatever that you just don't want to do anymore. So there's my question of the day. Make sure you guys read each other's comments because it is just, there is invaluable information in there. So just make sure to do that. Okay, so my number 1 thing is it's one of those bad habits I have that I've kind of dissected, and it's not just outside, it's inside as well, because I am just notorious, as Stuart will tell you, about losing losing things. I put down my coffee cup, I put down my water bottle, I put down my phone, I put down my sunglasses, and then I can't remember where I put them, and I spend way too much time looking for them. Likewise, all of my gardening tools, hand tool supplies, I do the same thing. I put them down, can't remember where I put them, and I spend way too much time looking for them. So I don't mind being intentionally inefficient when I'm trying to get my steps in and I go back and forth, but I don't want to be inefficient just because I'm wasting time looking for things because I was just a little bit too spacey while I was doing a chore. Stuart, aren't I right? I do tend to be. I think in my head about what I'm going to do next, and then I am spacey. So this is something that I have really thought about and I've tried to be very good about recently, and that is don't plop or toss, place. So how many times have we finished doing something? So yesterday, you guys, you can see in here that I started cutting back all of my hellebores. And look what's been revealed in here, Stuart. Look at all this new growth under here. So I am gingerly removing this leafy blanket from these hellebores so that it really kind of doesn't diminish or detract from the beauty of the hellebores. So what I'm also doing, in addition to removing the leafy debris, is I am cutting back the foliage, and I'm just cutting it back all the way. Just, you kind of can't see very well, but I'm cutting it back as far as I can to kind of the basil rosette there. Now, a lot of times I am interrupted. Stuart is stepping on some hellebores right there. Oh, no, you're not. Yes, you were. Poor little guy. And I was working on this, and somebody stopped by to chat. And I approached the car because I couldn't hear them very well. So what did I do? I just did that. I just kind of tossed down my pruners. I plopped them and tossed them. I didn't place them. And so what happens then when you do that is you can't find them. You can't find almost anything. You toss a bill onto a counter, and then later you toss something on top of it. And so that is far different than me very mindfully and intentionally placing them someplace where I will remember where I put them. So by placing and not tossing, don't toss, place, I am hoping to be a lot more efficient. So for example, I could have come this way and then just very intentionally place them where I could see them, doing it slowly so that I could take a mental image. Now I know a lot of you guys are thinking, oh my gosh, she is just way too over the top, fastidious. Come on, aren't you enjoying what you're doing when you're being outside in the flow gardening? Absolutely I am. And I don't want to disrupt my happy flow by getting myself frustrated because I can't find something. So that is why I'm trying to be more attentive to where I put things by mindfully and carefully and slowly placing them rather than plopping them. Stuart, does that make sense? Yep. Okay, and I do that inside as well. So that is my first don't. Don't plop or toss, place. Okay, my next thing is I don't want, let me just tell you what, let's just stop here and let's go to the new area, and I'll proceed with number 2 because I need to get some things. And I'm going to say again, for those of you that are new to the channel, these are true vlogs. So if I misspeak, if I say Sherman-Williams when I meant to say Sherwin-Williams, those kinds of things, we don't go back and do a ton of editing. As long as I have a feeling that you guys understand what I'm trying to communicate, then what we want is for these to be real time, what's really happening on almost a day-to-day basis. So, so there you go if you're new to our channel. Okay, here's the other thing. Don't have someone else do something you need to do yourself. Now let me explain that. I have revealed recently that I have gotten a lot more help out in the garden than I have before, because there's lots of people that can help me with digging a hole or hanging a heavy basket or moving a large pot or something of that nature, or trimming some branches that are way too high. Those things somebody can help me with. But one mistake I made was last year I had somebody help me with all of my leaf cleanup in the front yard. And what that did was really, I think, inappropriately skim some of the topsoil off, and it just dried out, and I think destroyed some tiny little seedlings that I had come up. In other words, when they were blowing, they just were a little too overly aggressive with it, and they blew not only the leaves and everything, but they also blew a good bit of the topsoil, and I think my seedlings. So this is one thing that this year I am going to do myself. I don't want to have someone else do something that requires a little bit more dexterity and finesse. Likewise, when it comes to doing design work, my husband will sometimes say, oh, get somebody to help you with that. And I'll say, no, somebody can't help me with that. That is an aesthetic and a design thing I need to do myself. And this is the same thing. So I take great delight this time of year. And I'm not going to be overly aggressive about removing the leaves. I'm going to selectively remove them from some things. But when there are tulip bulbs coming up, when I want to reveal something that is going to be in its moment, like the hellebores, then I'm going to judiciously remove some of the leaves and the twigs and the debris around it, so that what comes up will be beautiful. And you can see here, this is an example. When they were blowing the other day, they blew this off, and you can see that there's almost a depression here from how much of the soil got blown away. You can now begin to see that there's tiny little tips of tulips that are coming through here. So instead of using a blower here, I'm going to do it myself, and I'm going to go back up through here. For example, in here, Stuart, if you can see, I've got, and I normally don't try to step on my own flower beds, but look, I've got lots of larkspur seedlings coming up in here. And if somebody just raked all these leaves out and they were just a little too brutal and harsh with it, then they might rake away these little seedlings, and I don't want that to happen. The other thing is, this is an opportunity then for me to be really observant. And I can see here that some of the topsoil has washed away, and once I clean up the leaves, I may come in and add a little bit more mulch, and I can see what is going on. So by removing these leaves myself, I am not brutalizing this area. So don't have someone else do something that you really need to finesse and do yourself. Now let's move on to number 3. Well, the third thing I don't want to do is I don't want to overdo it initially. It is just the beginning of the gardening season. I haven't been out here gardening in a while, and my body and my muscles just quite frankly aren't used to the type of movements and positions and activities that my gardening dictates. So I'm not going to do it all at once. I'm going to try to pace myself, which will do two things. It will be kinder to my body. It will also be kinder to the garden, because I can prioritize which areas need to be cleaned up first and leave the other ones that might be more vulnerable to a cold snap for last. So along those lines of in my previous video where I talked about a little jolt of happiness is to go out and clean up a 12 by 12 area, this is one of those kinds of things where I can go in and I can clean up a section of my garden rather quickly without overstressing myself and taxing myself too much before my body has gotten adjusted to all of the movements and activity of the gardening season. Because gardening is a sport. I talk about that in my book, and we really have to heed what our body is telling us. So now let's move on to number 4. So here is my next thing, and I'm telling myself, Linda, Don't buy what you don't need. I have way too much stuff in my front yard now because so much of it has grown in place and it's matured, and I don't need as many of certain shrubs to get good coverage as I had in the past. I'm also going to take that into consideration as I look at other areas that need improving. So this whole spot in here, which I've showed you many times, this was what got brutalized in the ice storm of last October, or a year ago last October. It used to be that these Foster hollies, which by the way, Foster hollies are one of my favorite plants. I love them. These started out to be about 6 feet tall, and they grew into place, and they provide really nice, really a nice habitat for lots of birds, beautiful berries, and when they are full, they really help enclose this space and give me kind of a green wall. I hope you guys can hear over the doggy. But what happened when all of these branches were sheared, it used to be that the canopy, Stuart, if you can show them, went all the way out to the curb of the neighbor's drive. Well, when it sheared all of these hollies, I'm going to come back around here, peekaboo, it exposed all sorts of just area that is very prone to erosion. A lot of the topsoil just keeps washing away, which creates not only a problem in that I am losing topsoil, but it also potentially might make a mess on my neighbor's drive, and I want to be a good neighbor. So putting those two things together, I have identified some nandinas, and these are what they are. They do not berry, they're lower growing, as in nana. They turn this beautiful red. I showed how I clip from them to make flower arrangements. But I have a smattering of them along in here, and you can easily see how much more beautiful it would look in this barren area right here if I added, say, and this is a perfect example of using a shrub as a ground cover. If I added one where, or added multiples where these orange flags are. So I just got some of these utility flags and I put them where I want some plants to be transplanted. So this may be something that I have someone help me with, because they can do it easily while I am doing those chores that I really need to do myself, like removing delicately that leafy debris. So now let's come down this way. Stuart, I'm going to come on the back side. I'm going to plant another one here. This, by the way, you guys, is a transplant of a red pygmy barberry. I'm not sure if it made it through the winter or not. I believe it did, that I transplanted from someplace else along with these. So I had already started the process of stealing from Peter to pay Paul in my line of thinking of don't buy what I don't need. So I'm going to come back over here, and some of these that are crowded together or unnecessary, I'm going to plant in different areas. So, for example, I've got a nandina. This is actually an obsession nandina, but I don't care because it's in the same color family. So I'm going to dig this one out because it's too close to this boxwood, and it's pretty close to these, and it just looks crowded and unnecessary. I've got one here that is not really thriving because it is crammed in between and squeezed in between these boxwoods. So I'm going to remove that one. I think I'm also going to remove this big one because you can see how large it's growing, and pretty soon it's going to impede the beauty or impede the growth of this boxwood on this side. Pretty soon this will start dying out. So I'm going to remove this one too. And by using these utility flags, when I have a helper come, I can say just move these over there, and before I've spent any money on filling that area that needs to be improved, that's just empty right now, filling that void, I can use some things that I've already got. So that is my number 4. Don't buy things unnecessarily when you can replant and transplant something you already have. So number 5, this one I do every year. I don't know why I do it, but I do, and that is I don't remember to go back and look at all of the notes that I made from the previous growing season and throughout the winter about things that I wanted to correct, improve, or add to my garden in the spring. So I'll make notes in my garden journal, I'll make notes on a garden calendar, but then I don't always go back and actually read what I wrote down. If I had been looking at a magazine and I found a brand new annual that I wanted to try and I jotted down its name, or there was a new shrub I wanted to try, or a color palette that I was inspired by when I went on a garden tour, I made those notes, but did I go back and reread them to actually execute and incorporate those ideas into my garden? No, I did not. So this year, I don't want to forget all of the mental work that I did last year to help improve the looks of my garden this year. So for example, last year I just read in my garden journal that I wrote a note, next year plant lots more plumbago. And so I now need to remember that that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to prioritize looking for the plumbago at the beginning of the season, because now I know I can't always find what I want when I want it. And other types of shrubs and things that I want to go ahead and look for and try to source now, because I may not be able to find them later, and because I want to remember the aesthetic that I had in mind when I was really deep into what my garden was doing and how things were performing in the last season. So that would be my number 5 thing. Linda, don't forget to look back at all of the notes and scratchings that you recorded last growing season that you wanted to remind yourself of this year. Here's a bonus, Don't overlook the obvious. I am terrible about just going about my daily rounds and I don't see what is right in front of me. So there'll be something that is just really ugly or unattractive, or could be easily beautified, but because I've gotten so inured to it and so used to seeing it in that situation that I am completely oblivious to it. So here's an example of something that it might take me a while to address. So it is obvious to me now that some of these smaller boxwoods, probably because it was such a dry winter with such extreme temperatures, a number of these boxwood in these urns may not have made it. They're starting to look kind of crispy. And because I've taken these poor little things for granted, as I often do my evergreens, I think of them as just fixtures that don't need a lot of tending and not a lot of watering and feeding. I just sometimes forget to be attentive to them. I just think of them as just kind of background noise. Well, often I overlook the obvious of something like some of these boxwood might be dead, and before I know it, they have died, they have been dead for a while, and I haven't addressed them and I haven't replaced them. So whatever that could mean in your own garden, however you would define the obvious, don't overlook the obvious and try to address those things now when they're especially obvious, because things haven't leafed out, they haven't greened out, they haven't flushed out, and so those ugly things are probably going to be especially apparent. So that is kind of my last don't. Don't overlook the obvious of something that could be easily beautified. Well, here is your outfit du jour for your fashion epilogue. First of all, my main accessory today is my Works blower. Now, I've showed you guys a couple that I use. One is the high-powered Lively blower. This one is it's just a little gentler when you're worried about disrupting seedlings and things like that may be coming up out of the soil. And it's got that kind of, Stuart calls this my commando look. So anyhow, I want to let you know, Stuart, let's try to put a link above. You can always find a link in the descriptions or in the comments. Just ask me what it is. My sunglasses are Target from years ago. My earrings, what are my earrings? My earrings, I got these from my little boutique that I like, Eden. I love this vest, this kind of khaki vest, safari vest. It is from Altered State. I got it on sale about 3 or 4 years ago. My top is from H&M. It's just a light flannel, and I like it because it's a light flannel, so it makes these transition seasons in between winter and spring, it makes it really nice. Somebody asked me about, they were going back and looking at a lot of my past videos and wanted to know about the scarf that I wear around my neck. Is it practical or fashionable? And I would say it's probably both, but I use it primarily as soon as the sun starts getting strong, to protect my décolleté so that I don't get undue sun damage on my neck or on my upper chest. And by the way, I also have a whole layer of sunscreen underneath this. My breeches are Ann Taylor Loft. These are thrifted, I think, from Goodwill. And my hunter boots are I got these off of eBay. So there you go. There is my outfit of the day.